My name is Emily Sanders, and I'm going to explain some of the processes that happen in the brain in regards to creativity. First, I think it's important to define creativity for the purposes of this presentation. There are many definitions of creativity. As it says in Starko's book on page 6, quote, "To be considered creative, a product or idea must be original or novel," end quote. So where does creativity come from, and what's happening in the brain when problems are solved in new ways? There are over 100 billion neurons or brain cells in the brain. The dendrites are like branches, and with the nucleus, axon, and myelin sheath, it forms a network of pathways in the brain. The areas of intersection between brain cells are synapses, which release electric and chemical reactions into receptor cells. Through the use of technology today, we're actually able to see these reactions and to verify the changes which happen during creative thinking. The term growing dendrites refers to new growth with neurons that are frequently used in the brain. The more the brain is exposed to new information, the more dendrites are formed and new pathways appear. This is why the idea of growing dendrites is so important. The more that the pathways of dendrites are used, the stronger they become. How can we help students to use creative thinking and to maximize this activity in their brains? There are three basic elements that can be very powerful in terms of bringing creativity into the classroom. If we think of the word Q, it stands for three different things, and the first one is creative. Before students can learn, something or someone must really capture their attention. In traditional lesson plans, we call this the anticipatory set, which is used to motivate students and get them engaged and ready to learn. Many teachers use novelty, humor, or surprise in order to capture their attention and to get them excited about what they're learning. The second one is useful. Students must be able to connect their past experiences with the new information, and it must be relevant to them. And this is often done with hands-on experiences, but it is important for students to see that what they're learning is meaningful. The third one is emotional impact. Emotions are connected with learning, and then those emotions are all throughout the brain. And students must feel a sense of connection with what they're learning, especially in terms of the emotional climate of the class and the emotions that they associate with what they are actually learning. There have been some interesting studies done on the whole idea of integrating art into the classroom and how it does improve content retention of students. One study by Rin and al. In 2011 focused on the whole idea of the long-term memory effect when students were able to repeat information and rehearse it over and over. So the whole idea of rehearse more, remember more is something that's used a lot with students in the arts, such as things like drama presentations, musical presentations. And this adds meaning and helps students to think deeply and develop divergent thinking. Another study by Crick and Watkins in 1973 also took the same idea and kind of elaborated on the whole idea of how you would do something that the information is elaborated upon and linked to other information. Starko wrote that there is an abundant evidence to suggest that the strategies that support creativity, like solving problems or exploring multiple options and learning inquiry, also support depth of understanding. So in order to maximize retention of content, it is important for students to have some kind of enactment, to speak aloud, to repeat information, and this also can include things like drama activities, music, art, and public speaking. Effort is a very important tool because increased effort is required to retain information and can be attained through increased practice and reinforcement. Oral presentations are very powerful with students because research has shown that speaking is more effective for content retention than silent studying. When looking at the creative brain and how insight actually works, the studies of Jonathan Schooler are very interesting because he studied brain scans of creative people and came up with some new ideas about how insight is an integral part of creativity and what's really happening in the brain. He theorized that when people overcome assumptions and come up with new solutions, and when distractions are minimized, the brain gets a little quieter and the alpha waves become active. And then in these moments, there's a burst of gamma waves and it creates moments of insight, which is a part of creativity. There are differences between creativity and intelligence. In intelligence in the brain, we're talking about the fast firing of neurons in the gray matter where information is being collected. But in highly creative people, they actually have less white matter in the brain to provide more space for making connections. more open pathways exist, and there's what's called a cognitive slowdown, which is related to divergent thinking during creative thinking in the brain. So many scientists now think that creativity is relatively slow in some ways in the brain and not linear, and that there's an actual shutdown of activity in the prefrontal cortex during highly creative moments, so the brain can take risks creatively and get new insights. New and unexpected experiences, along with changing cognitive habits, do boost creativity. And the term mind wandering refers to being able to explore things, being able to tinker with things, being able to try new things. So, divergent thinking has been something that scientists are studying now, and it's in its relationship to creativity. And one example would be there have been a number of studies done with pilots and their survival in World War II, because in order to survive, they had to exercise a lot of divergent thinking and come up with new ways so that they could survive. So the more inventive and innovative thinking is, the more creative an individual will be. Other studies have been done on jazz musicians, since it is a improvisational art, and they've found that the brain scans of jazz musicians also support the theory that when someone is allowed to explore and let their mind wander, they can experience a lot of creativity. Everyone can be creative. There's some traditional definitions of creativity that it was only reserved for musicians or artists or actors. But as we can see, in looking at those physical reactions in the brain, we all have the potential to be creative. The cortex contains two-thirds of the brain's neurons, and it's the basis of all brain activity. 100 billion neurons speak to each other, forming new pathways, sending and receiving messages. Bringing creativity and innovation into the classroom will be a very important part of 21st century learning skills. It's important to remember that the mental processes combined in new ways in the brain do create changes in the prefrontal cortex, and that slowdown allows for risk-taking and new ideas to emerge. So these unexpected and new experiences actually facilitate creativity. You can be creative and you can facilitate creativity by taking a break, walking, or doing something repetitive and undemanding mentally to allow for that slowdown in the brain. Those new experiences and unexpected opportunities will help you to discover multiple perspectives and improvise new solutions. Ken Robinson studied creativity and believes that only with experiences in creativity will our students be able to prepare for that shape-shifting world they must embrace. In Robinson's home country of Great Britain, the government, with his assistance, has established Creative Partnerships, the government's flagship creative learning program designed to develop the skills young people across England will need, raising their aspirations and achievements and opening up for opportunities in their future. On the other side of the world, the Taiwanese Ministry of Education is trying to make Taiwan a, quote, republic of creativity, unquote, where creativity would be very important to everyone's life. And they're saying that students will need more than just the knowledge that they could measure on traditional tests. They're saying that they are going to need the skills, attitudes, and habits required for solving problems unimaginable today. They'll need to see varied viewpoints, they'll need to understand people across the globe, and they will need to be creative. This is the type of policy change needed in education today, which will help to prepare our students for the 21st century by facilitating learning environments where creativity is the norm and flexible thinking with imagination is expected and encouraged.